And I say hello to Charles. Hello, Charles.
Thank you, Astrid. And thank you for looking after us yesterday as well. Now I'm lucky I just have one person, but Christiane is the keynote. So yes, we must focus on our link with Sweden.
Yeah, we must. So first we talked to Christiane Dolva, Head of Sustainability at Fjällräven, about durability as a core value. It is so important to produce products that are durable and maybe also classic in style. So we have to reduce the waste. So Charles,
exactly.
I would love to pass the word to you. So,
no problem.
Is Christiane also here? I see her. Yeah. I see you. So
the wonders of technology.
Yeah. Okay. After that, you have the possibility to ask questions. But now,
thank you,
Charles and Christiane.
Okay. On the back of what Astrid's just said, I know that you have a panel with Anna being chaired by Anna in an hour and a half's time, featuring Alan Wheeler from England, who is a specialist on textiles, well worth tuning into. But Sophie, right at the end of the day, or the last but one panels of today, has got Cindy in from Warn Again. If you've not heard these two people speak, make sure you come back and plug into those presentations, because they're people that I learn from. But to start off this one, I must thank Ralph White from the UK, who has made this interview possible. He thought he was going to retire, but we just keep on bringing him back into the industry. I'm a university lecturer from a small London college who always speaks too much, and Astrid will jump up and down when I've been speaking and she wants to butt in with questions. But do put your questions, type them into the box on the screen, and we'll get round to the best of them at the end of the presentation, and also continue the conversation during the day. But the object of this is to find out the character of the person behind the sustainability policies at Fjallraven. And to do that, we need to go on the journey that both Christiane and Fjallraven have been on to get to this point. Now, Christiane herself started as a political science graduate from Lillehammer in Norway, but she's now in the middle of what is seen as the central aspect of Fjällräven itself, which is also the most popular European outdoor brand in the American market. Now, I know that Christiane was successful in playing a director role within the Scandinavian Outdoor Group Trade Association, as well as everything else, to get them to adopt some of the best environmental practices of any trade body. To fill in these, to join the dots between these gaps, I want to turn the microphone over to Christiane. So thank you for appearing.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to get this opportunity to talk to you and to everyone else about one of the topics that lies probably closest to my heart, and also to the sustainability strategy within Fjällräven, which is product durability and longevity. But yeah, connecting the dots. I mean, my journey into sustainability definitely started pretty early on, actually, with me joining an environmental club for kids, yelling at my parents if they were running their car engine too much and not turning off the car, because I learned that emissions from cars are not good for the environment. But I did have a detour through political science in Norway, studying with a lot of extremely engaged people on a lot of different topics. And slowly during those years, I came to realize that I really wanted to jump into the debate whenever the topic of environmental sustainability came in. So that's also what kind of spurred me to start looking at how can I dig deeper into this topic. And I feel kind of old when I say that, but at that time, there weren't too many university courses around focusing on sustainability. But I did find one in Sweden, which I think is maybe a bit symbolic to Sweden as a country being quite a lot in the forefront. And it's not very often that Norwegians do admit that Sweden might be in the forefront, because we have this big brother, small brother battle going on, but I do have to give them that. So yeah, I ended up at the Stockholm Resilience Center, which was hosted by Johan Rockström, and they had a course on sustainable enterprising. So that's when I kind of realized that, okay, there is a space for me in terms of looking at how can sustainability become a driving force in business development. So that's kind of how I ended up with doing that. I worked as a consultant for many years within the field of sustainability, which taught me a lot because it made me come in touch with so many different industries. And it's always fascinating to see sustainability being different depending on what industry you're working in. But I have to admit that I kind of found home when I ended up in the outdoor industry, where I was allowed to kind of marry my passion for spending time out in nature with also working on integrating sustainability into long-term business development. And within my role at Fjällräven, which I've had for the past 6 years, I've also, as you said, Charles, been able to work with a lot of peers in our industry, both through the Scandinavian Outdoor Group, where I, together with the board, we were able to take some really important steps in terms of having all the Scandinavian outdoor brands aligning around what ambitions we want to have on sustainability. But I also have to say that the outdoor industry in itself is brilliant when it comes to cooperation and collaboration on the topic of sustainability, which I really appreciate, because so many of the different topics that we do have to work on, we have to do together. And there's no point in any of us trying to solve all of them alone.
Okay, well, Christiane, that's a great start, but I also now want to find out more about the start for Fjallraven themselves, because within our industry, they're often quoted as an exemplar, doing things slightly differently, but I don't know whether I don't see the failures, but they just seem to be successful in what they're doing by being that slight bit different. Now, in outdoor, we admire the classic styling. We're far too techie normally. In athleisure, those brands marvel at your competitive price points. From the environmental groups that I lurk with, you've embraced more technology on environmental terms than almost anyone else within Europe. Now, if there's a classic book on how to do business, you've not followed it. Why have you succeeded as a brand in doing that? But I want to know, what attracted you to work for Fjällräven, and what do you think you have been able to bring to the brand over the last half decade?
It's a good question. I just have to tell you that I told our CEO, Martin Axelhed, who's basically grown up in Fjällräven and been in the company for more than 20 years, that you made that comment of maybe not following all the rules, which made him truly happy, because that is basically how everything started for Fjällräven. And we might even be perceived as a bit stubborn in that sense, that we always try and figure out our own way of doing things. And that's part of what attracted me to start working with Fjällräven as well. So maybe just for those of you who don't know the history of Fjällräven, I can do a slight recap of that, and because it's really still very much affecting how we make decisions and what choices we make today. And it started in Sweden in the 1960s, where our founder, Åke Nordin, he was basically, ever since he was a young boy in school, he was roaming around in nature and trying to figure out what gear and equipment could make that experience more comfortable for him. So on one of his trips, he was not happy with the backpacks that were available, and he went back to his garage. And since his mom was a seamstress, he'd learned how to handle a sewing machine at an early age. And he basically just sat down and figured out how this carrying frame could be constructed so that his comfort when carrying heavy loads could improve. And that's all how it started and what it grew out from, this notion of trying to solve different problems in order to make an experience of being out in nature more comfortable, more enjoyable. So that kind of went on from the backpacks. He was roaming around with his own made backpack, met others, such as the Sami people up in the north that do really live out in nature, and they were curious about it and wanted him to make the same type of construction for them. And that's when he was like, okay, there might be a business opportunity here as well. And that came, it came over to the tents, where he wasn't happy with the canvas tents that were available at that time. So he constructed the thermotent with two different layers there, and then eventually also going into garments. And why I want to kind of just wheel back to the history of things is probably because Åke Nordin and his philosophy was not to do what everyone else was doing, but to figure out his own way of solving things. And that's, I guess, a lot of how we still run our company or the decisions we make. So we've stuck to that recipe for very long. We've been very stubborn on the fact that we are not about fast-moving trends. We are about timeless design, and we are not aiming for the highest peak or conquering the mountains. We're just about inspiring people to walk with nature. And the notion of walking with is important there, because it's just about getting out. And we do focus obviously on gear and products that can make that experience more comfortable, but also on inspiring people to go out through different events and activities that we have, which from a sustainability perspective is sometimes forgotten in the conversation, but still important, because we know from a lot of studies that the more time people spend out in the outdoors, the more likely they're also wanting to be part of preserving nature. So it serves a dual purpose also of us hoping to kind of get even more people out in nature. So yeah, that's how it all started. And I think that that has affected how we adapt and look at sustainability, because we want to thread carefully, or as we say it, we want to leave base camp in a better shape than we found it, which is a word or a quote that has lived with us and kind of linger in the back of our mind whenever we choose materials or constructions or design products or choose supply chain partners, that's the ultimate goal.
Well, that makes sense. Christiane and I first met a couple of years ago in Malmo. The European Outdoor Summit was there, and I latched on to following Christiane around because we were both booked for the same seminars, and she was asking a higher quality question than I was. So it was my immediate reaction that I need to learn from this person. And what bemused me the most is Fjallraven were not using the most environmental fabrics. They were actually choosing the best performing fabrics for their audience. And as has been pointed out, that audience wasn't the people going to the very top of the mountain. It was the mass population. Now, on top of that, Fjällräven offered an everlasting repair service for their goods. And this, I thought, was a very good thing. But when I asked her about what the ratio was for the profit center, to find out the person behind the project doesn't even know whether it's profitable, whether it loses money or not, just reflected so much of the values of within that brand. Christiane, can I ask you to explain again, how come you've got values at the middle of the brand rather than profit? And how has this secured the relationship between Fjällräven and its customers?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you're touching on it in terms of how we choose materials and how we choose to offer repairs and how we choose to kind of cater for a more long-term relationship with anyone that chooses to wear our products. And that's something that we truly hold dearly, because there is a lot of, we could have run in a direction of just producing goods that is going off the shelves and leave it at that. But I believe that there's such a value in ensuring that we keep on that conversation with anyone using our gear. And also, I mean, the repair service and that entire conversation of how you can adapt and ensure that the products last for a long time is at the core also of our sustainability work. Because what we found out, and when I started at Fjällräven, there weren't any, we didn't have a sustainability manager, but we'd done so many great things already. So I have like the pleasure of working with so many passionate people that they're running on it anyhow. So my job is just kind of running after and ensuring that we're running in the same direction. But I do sometimes get the question like, okay, but what's most important for us in the area of sustainability? And then I always say that it's to make sure that our products last for as long as possible. And sometimes that's even lost on us because it's such an integrated part of our design philosophy. But there are so many studies showing up now showing that, and maybe referring back to Astrid's introduction here, that the longer you use a product, the lower the overall impact is. So that's definitely one of the core values that guide us in also offering, for example, the repair service, but wanting to keep that relationship with the customers. And actually, we a couple of years ago, we decided we don't even talk about our consumers of our products, because we don't want our products to be consumed. We talk about the users, which I believe there's only a few industries in the world referring to their customers as users, and I guess one of them is the drug industry, and the other one is software, IT software, but we're the third. But it's important because it lies in, I mean, it lies in those details of understanding that we're about a lot more than just pushing products out to the market. We are problem solvers because we want to solve a functional problem, and hence also referring to what you said in terms of us choosing the best performing fabrics and also constructions, it's coupling the environmental impact of materials, which we do work a lot. I could spend 210% of my time trying to assess what materials are better or worse from an environmental sustainability point of view. We still need to couple that with what functionality are we looking for that particular application, and also how can we ensure that we choose the best material, both from a functional perspective, environmental perspective, and durability perspective. And it's only when we couple those three that we kind of reach the end goal of ensuring that the product can last for as long as possible. And also our hope then to continue that dialogue of not only offering repair, but learning from the repairs that we're doing. So, I mean, even if we might not calculate exactly what profit we make on our repair offering, I believe that the signal effect of showing that, hey, we want to support you in being able to repair this product so it can last longer, and also the learnings we get from that is so valuable to feed back into our product development process of like, okay, so this is a construction that tend to fail. How can we make it differently? Because it's all about trying to avoid that stuff ends up having to be repaired in the first place. And that loop is adding so much value to us as well. And so I think that there are a lot more values to be calculated into that approach than just the euros at the bottom line.
Well, that bemuses me because, as you know, the whole of our industry has leapt forward with the modern technical fabrics. But the central fabric that we all associate with Fjallraven, to use an expression, it's hassle. We need to reproof it. And if I need to reproof every other fabric I use, I put it in the washing machine, I clean it, I put it into a reproofing solution. But you're using wax And wax is not the easiest of things to apply. So you're creating hassle for the customer so that they can have a garment as good as they want. Now, what I'm interested is, one, if it had been approached to me as a business idea, we're going to make it harder for our customer to love their product, because the product that performs the best is the one which is loved the most. And I explain it to my students in terms of cars, that if you buy a quality car, you need to put it into a car service to keep it at its top level, but also to keep its safety standards there. Why? I would like you to comment further on why Fjällräven are concentrating on such a, what's turned out to be brilliant fabric, but the process of waxing, rather than trying to take an easier option like the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I love that you picked that up, because yes, we do have our G1000 fabric, and we do talk a lot about and encourage people to use the waxing as a way of reproofing it, but also ensuring that the lifespan of the material is prolonged. And no, it might not be the quickest and easiest solution, but I strongly believe that what creates durability is not just about ensuring that it doesn't fall apart and that it would stand the test of time, but also that you get some type of emotional connection to the product that you're buying. And I think there is a beauty into trying to kind of reel almost back a little bit to how we take care of our things, take care of the products that we own, and remember that they're an investment. Because often we all know, I think, that the product comes with the price that you pay as a customer, but it comes with a price also in terms of the product actually having an impact on our environment. And we can do everything we can, and we really do that, to try and minimize that negative impact. But even with all the different improvements that we can make, it's still important to remember that there is still an impact to that product that is hanging in the store and that you then choose to buy and invest in. So we have like this common responsibility to ensure that we take care of those investments. And I believe that if you have, I like your car analogy, because it's really good, but it's the same with, for example, a pair of leather trekking boots, that they just become better and better the more you wear them in. And for us to figure out how our products can be worn in instead of worn out, and how we can form that kind of bond to the product, yeah, then maybe the fact that you take 10 or 15 minutes to wax and ensure that you take care of that garment makes you more likely to want to care for it. And actually have, like, the best example I have to explain that is actually a jacket that is hanging in my wardrobe now, but it was hanging in the stores in the late 1970s in Lillehammer, where my grandma bought it. And it's a Fjällräven jacket. It's a Räven jacket, which is one that we still have in our collection, and made out of the G1000 fabric. And she wore it for decades, and took care of it and waxed it and had it on so many of her adventures. And now, 5 years ago, she was really proud when she was able to hand it over to me, and I wear it and love it and wax it, and I've repaired it. So it has definitely, withstand the test of time. And that story is great from a functional perspective, because it's still truly functional. It's great from a durability perspective, because it hasn't fallen apart. It's great from a timeless design perspective, because I don't feel like I'm wearing a jacket from the 70s. And if you go on our website, the jacket still looks the same today as it did when it was developed. But the beautiful part of it is the fact that she kept it. And she's not a person who's like collected a lot of stuff in her life and never gets rid of things. But there was something to that product that made her keep it for all those years. And she for sure didn't know that I was going to start working at Fjällräven one day, and then she would be able to hand it over to me. And that's probably the one intriguing point that we work a lot on, understanding like what makes people keep on wearing and loving a product and keep it. for as long as possible, instead of, as was said again in the introduction, using it a couple of times and then getting rid of it.
Well, this is where the subject of emotional durability came up. And we're in an industry that is always talking about a new standard of durability, but they concentrate on the physical durability of the fabric. There's also fit durability for those people who don't realize the three durabilities. Anyone who's got growing kids will know about fit durability. But the third, which is recognized as having the biggest environmental impact, is the emotional durability of the garment. Now, when we look at emotional durability, I define it as how long you want to have that garment for, or rather how long until your affection for an upgraded product happens. So you've explained to us the design philosophy, which is essentially slow fashion coming into the outdoor field, a field which always wants to reinvent itself on some new technical standard every couple of years. Can you go into slightly more detail about this philosophy of the emotional durability?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk all day about this, Charles, no problem, because this is definitely...
Astrid will start to object if we take all day.
I know. No, but it's definitely one thing that I think sometimes gets overlooked, and which is also why we've chosen to work so much with it, because when we started looking at the actual effects of having products lasting for as long as possible, and as I said, the impact that is there in the beginning, no matter how good we try and minimize that in the product development cycle, I usually kind of compare it to buying a tent. So if you buy a tent and sleep in it one night, that's a very expensive night. You could get a fairly good hotel for that price, but for every night you sleep in that tent, the price per night goes down. And that's the same thing with the product you buy, the environmental impact. So for every time you use it and for every year you keep on using it, loving it, the impact per usage or per year goes down. So that's the sustainability driver behind that. And then I sometimes get the question of like, but does that make business sense to try and get people to buy a jacket and then use it for as long as possible? Don't you want them to buy a new one next season? And I think that that's where we need to be bold and look at the value of creating the long-lasting relationship through high-quality products with timeless design, and timeless design might be, hard to grasp, but for us at least, how we apply that is to not try and capture or run after short-term trends, but rather stick to functional solutions and a simplistic aesthetic, not adding a pocket or a trim if it's not needed from a functional perspective, and then look at more timeless color palette as well, just to ensure that when we put effort into having a product that can, from a durability point of view, last for 20, 30 years, that opportunity is kind of lost if the one who uses it wants to get rid of it after a season. And hence the timeless design perspective is so important to form that emotional bond to the product. So you want to keep on wearing it. But it's also obviously connected to functionality. I think most of us might have that, that favorite t-shirt or the favorite pair of trousers that you just keep on using. And even if they start looking like, I don't know, and almost fall apart, you still at least wear them out on the countryside or when you do gardening. And when you stop and reflect on why you have those pieces that you really always come back to, I think that one of the features is functionality. They might have a construction, a detail, a pocketing solution that you don't feel that you found somewhere else, or a comfortable fit that is unique that you don't feel that you can find anywhere else. So it's coupling all those things and having, I guess, being a bit
It's
stubborn
almost
again.
having the faith
Yes.
that what you're doing is right.
Exactly. And that's exactly, thank you. You gave me a better word than the stubbornness, but the faith in sticking to what we're good at and doing that year after year, and which we have proof of. If you look at the Raven jacket, which I mentioned, that's my grandma jacket, which is still in our collection. It was developed in the late 70s, and we have several examples of that, or our down parkas that have been around since the late 70s. And maybe the best example is the Konken backpack, the square backpack that it might
Every
be.
child in Scandinavia goes to school with.
Yeah, and it was developed because children in Scandinavia, when wearing shoulder bag, were suffering from back problems, and hence our founder Åke Nordin was like, okay, how can we solve that? And the Konken backpack was born. And yes, it has had its ups and downs. Right now, it's very trendy. It's all over the place, but it hasn't changed. The look, the functionality, the design has not changed because we haven't made it longer or smaller or rounder. We keep that and then just have faith in that the functionality of that product will make it last for as long as possible. And I think that's the rewarding part, where there are, if you ask then if it makes business sense, yes, I think it does, because it creates trust in a brand that you know that it won't change. And you can come back to it. And if you have a jacket that lasts for a long time, well, then maybe that's the brand you want to visit for another product for your life out in nature.
Well, I'm going to start to pull out of the emotional durability, because there are lots of other things about Fjällräven which are also of interest. So if you can give us a few clues, because when I talk about Fjällräven, it is about great product, which you've clearly demonstrated, but you also have this attitude of encouraging the responsible relationship between the user and the outdoor environment that surrounds us all. And there's a third aspect, which is inspiring others to become more active in the outdoors. Now, to me, this is what the European Outdoor Group is. They have business as their core. They created the European Outdoor Conservation Association, and they are now doing the lobbying to get more people more active through It's Great Out There. So full respect to Arne, what can Fjällräven tell him that he should be paying attention to in the future? What's going on? What's the next step for Fjällräven, in other words?
It's always interesting to try and look into the crystal ball of the future, isn't it? But I think that what you picked up on here, which is to look beyond the product and look at what type of other services, if that's what you want to call it, that you can provide as a brand, is super important. So for us, obviously, the leg of inspiring people to spend an active life out in nature has grown from a first Fjällräven classic trekking event in the early 2005, I think, to now having those events globally, because we realize that there is more to spending time in nature than just the product. So that's definitely something that I see as important and a future direction for the whole outdoor industry, to couple our products with encouraging people to spend time outdoors, and also doing that in a responsible way. So we have cooperation with organizations such as Leave No Trace, where we can educate people on how to spend time in the outdoors without harming nature. And we do have a cooperation with organizations that work on inclusivity in terms of access to the outdoors, and how can we reach new groups that might not have spent so much time out in nature, or might have barriers to spending time out in nature, whether it's socioeconomic barriers or physical barriers. So there is a lot of interesting things here in terms of inclusiveness and opening up nature as an arena for even more people. Because I think during COVID, we have seen an increasing interest for spending time out in nature. And maybe that's, because that's what's available right now, and a lot of the other stuff that we spend time on is not available. And obviously, if it's completely locked down, nature might not even be available. But we do see that need to connect to, and maybe for some even reconnect to nature. I believe there's a lot of exciting things to look into there. And then I also think that just from a sustainability point of view, we need to start looking not only at raw material and material choices, but at the entire production process. Because if you look at it from a CO2 emission perspective, we need to, as brands, put our investments into the innovative solutions that can drastically reduce the energy usage, the chemical usage, and the water usage in our industry. So that's also definitely something that's directing us for the coming years.
Well, that makes sense. I'm going to slip in one last question before Astrid introduces asking questions. A really quick one, Christiane. If there was one message looking in hindsight, speaking to the rest of the industry, what have you learned from what you have done wrong? What has not worked at Fjallraven with the implementation of sustainability? Whether it was getting the company to move with you, having expectations too high, what's the piece of advice you want to leave with the outdoor industry on how to make it the whole project a success?
Well, I'm going to make it really quick because I see Astrid is tapping us here. But I would say often you hear, or very often you hear, you need to have top management support. You need to have support from top management in order to integrate sustainability. And that's absolutely true. But one of the things that we also realize is never underestimate the need to integrate it into every aspect and every process and department. And one learning I had there is we have so many passionate people within our departments that are working on different projects, and I work together with them to take strides in the right direction. But then you also need all middle managers in every single area to be on board with that. Otherwise, it will not get its full effect. So I would say that we have talked a lot about integrating sustainability into everything we do, and we definitely have the top management support. But if there's anything I've learned, it's to not underestimate the work and effort and time and energy that you need to put into getting everyone the right tools and the right awareness to take their own sustainable decisions in their specific area of expertise.
Well, that's great. I'm going to shut up now. Astrid's going to be really happy because she's going to field a couple of questions.
Thank you, Christiane. We could talk 2 hours more, but I would love to give one question to you from Becky. She is asking, how do you communicate the importance of caring for your Fjällräven jacket to the user when so many users are used to such convenience in their lives?
It's a good question, and I guess it's an ongoing project that we have to try and create awareness around that. And so we work a lot with what information we integrate at the point of sales, which is where we have the direct contact of like, hey, remember that this is a product you should take care of. This is how you do it. It's not as difficult as it might come across being, showing really the ease of it. But then I also think that if you explain why, that's very powerful. So that's also a lot of the things that we're focusing on is to explain why it's important to care for your product. Because I don't think that anyone is blind to the fact that there is an impact, and it's in everyone's interest to ensure that that impact is put to the best use.
So thank you. And there are 2 quotes. Everybody loves your message, Christiane, about the design philosophy. So I think you are on the right way, because repairing and durability, I think it's the right way to have a solution to this problem. So thank you so much both. Charles and Christiane, we are
Thank you.
sorry that we are running out of time, but we have to spot the next panel. So thank you so much. And give your questions. No, don't worry about that. We will forward the questions to Fjällräven. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.